This conference will now be recorded.
This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, everyone is in attendance. We'll now take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. The first item up is the confirmation of agenda.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of January 18th, 2021 as presented.
Okay, I'll need someone to move and someone to second, Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no delegations in public meetings this evening. So we'll move into adoption of council and committee minutes.
That council approves the following minutes. Regular virtual meeting of council held on January 11th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Councillor Chapman, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Next item is minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes. Police Services Board meeting held on November 30th, 2020, and Police Services Board meeting held on December 8th, 2020.
Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Barber, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I was glad to see that the Aylmer Police Services Board did send a letter to the Malahide Township Council with regards to comments being made about the Aylmer Police Services. So I thought that was good.
Thank you, Councillor Charlton. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next item is the consent agenda, items A to G.
That items A to G of the January 18th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented, with actions to be taken as noted.
Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions, comments, anything that someone would like to poll? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, 7B, the Gravel Watch Ontario. I thought that was an excellent article. I always read this stuff, and that was really interesting. And the other thing I want to is 7G with regards to suspending the 2-hour parking limit in the municipal lots downtown. Good move by the emergency service people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Charlton. Are there any other items that someone would like to talk about in the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move into the action items, and the first one up is the report clerk 0221.
That report clerk 0221 entitled 2021 Census of Population Support Resolution be received for information. And further, that council supports the 2021 census and encourages all residents to complete their census questionnaire online at www.census.gc.ca.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Tarleton. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is a report, Corp 0421.
That report, Corp 0421, entitled 55 and 59 Pine Street West Consent Application, be received for information, and that council supports County of Elgin Consent Application E721 and directs staff to complete and forward the municipal appraisal sheet to Land Division Committee, noting the Town of Aylmer has no additional conditions for the proposed land division application as presented.
Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Ham. Before I ask for questions, perhaps the Director of Corporate Services, would you like to just give an overview of this report, please?
Sure, through you, Your Worship. This is a severance for technical reasons as a result of a passing and an inheritance of the property. The two properties that were formerly separated into two parcels were merged on title. So we've been contacted by the lawyer for the owner, who is acting as agent, to assist in the consent of reestablishing both 55 and 59 as separate properties following the merger on title.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is the budget presentation. Did you want to start that, Kale, please?
Sure, through you, Your Worship. So this is our third presentation so far on the budget for 2021. We're working hard to pull together as much information as possible. These meetings are coming back-to-back weeks, so there's a little bit of change from last week. We're trying to start into going over some of the 5-year project plans from each of the departments. And tonight we will look at a little bit of operations, water, sewer, and the corporate services department. So with respect to our timeline, we're still hoping to get the balance of the department's project summaries ready for the February 1st meeting. And then at that time, it's probably looking like the 22nd of February will be a good time for council to deliberate on projects or additional requests for the 2021 budget. With respective highlights so far this year, like I said, the reprofiling of projects that were not completed due to COVID impacts in 2020 has been pretty challenging, especially with the uncertainty of how many projects you hope to get done in 2021. Unfortunately, COVID is expected to impact our execution of projects this year, and we're doing our best individually to try and forecast what we can achievably carry out this year with those constraints. One of the caveats, we're still working on the source of funding for all of our projects. So we have different reserves, which each project is designed to come from. We're still reconciling our year-end, allocating our interest from past year reserves and funding for these projects. So these are a draft project list, and Finance Department will be working through that before the 22nd of February to determine exactly what and where these projects are being funded from and which ones are looking difficult to fund without taxation money. The assessment roll, as I say, was updated 1.86% from prior year growth in new development. So there is no phased in assessment, but we do have a 1.86% increase in our assessed value of our property in Aylmer. So with the current operating budget sitting at 4.4%, Councillor Oslach raised the question last meeting regarding what the impact would be on the average home in the town of Aylmer. So based on the 2020 assessment roll, the average single detached residential property was assessed at $212,728. Based on a 4.4% increase in the levy, the town of Elmer portion of the property taxes on an average home would increase approximately $49 in 2021. That's a 2.8% increase in their tax bill, so to speak. This estimate is just provided at this early stage just for indicative purposes for council. That does not include any impacts of County of Elgin tax rates or education levies. And so we will present a more detailed summary for council as we get closer to the end. And this is also assuming that no substantial projects need to be funded from the levy directly, that they would all be funded from the existing reserves. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions on that at this point, Your Worship. That was just in response to the direct question last session.
I don't see anyone with questions, and thank you for adding that. That just gives us a bit of a guideline, and as I know, it's just an estimate. So thank you for that. Okay, so if we move forward, as you can see, this is the draft projects for 2021 to 2025 for the operations department. We do our best, and this has been one of the major changes we've had in the last 3 years. In 2017, we would have forecast only the current year. In 2018, we did current year and some future with respect to a 10-year mill and pave schedule and a 10-year large infrastructure schedule. We're now getting each department to finalize and formulate their 5 and 10-year capital plans and all projects plans. So you'll see in this list, there are some things that are not necessarily capital improvements, but they're projects that we wouldn't do necessarily on an annual basis. So they're all presented here together for council, so you can have a good understanding of what projects out of the ordinary we're going to be taking care of, whether they're large capital or a street reconstruction. They may not all be that. So one example of that is the surface treatment program in the operations department. The director of operations believes that there's some opportunity to extend the lifespan of our existing road network by embarking on a surface treatment program, which we didn't used to have. And instead of including that in our operating budget and increasing those assets, this is a part of maintenance on our existing tangible capital assets, which is a life extension technique. So this is something that would be funded out of our asset management plan. And it's scheduled at $120,000 a year. And that is an active program to make sure that we're lining up the top surface of the road with the and the length of life that it can last. We're trying to line that up as best we can with the infrastructure that's underground, so that the two have to be replaced at the same time. A couple items there. You'll see where 2020 and 21 is a connected cell. So for example, the trackless tractor, that was approved in 2020, but it was not a completed project. So it is a carry forward to 2021. The Clarence Street project was approved at $1.2 million in 2020. The updated estimate is that project could run around $1.5 million. So that is a carry forward with some increased funding needed. The rest of the items there is some scheduled replacements of vehicles and Elk Street engineering. So that is the pre-engineering for the future Elk Street reconstruction project is in 2021, so that we could be ready to tender at the tail end of 2020 and on the tail end of 2021 and in early 2022 to get that project underway on schedule. Rob, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add to that or want to discuss those projects in more detail, but that's kind of the overview of what we had from a budget perspective.
Through your worship, unless anybody had any questions.
Can I ask you a question, Rob, before you start with your report, please? The surface treatment program, is that the one pertaining to what we did on Sydenham Street the past year? Is that the type of surface treatment, or are we talking about a different type of treatment?
That's one of the tools in our surface treatment program, Your Worship. Yes, it is.
Okay.
When I look to reinforce what Kale said there, when I look at a surface treatment program, to me, that's sort of a maintenance program where you maintain your surfaces of your road. They won't go as long as the underground will. But Kale is right. Truly, that's a betterment to the road. It extends that life expectancy along a little bit. So there's no secret formula to that. I just looked at our capital program and we're doing, one capital road a year. If we follow that program, by the time we get all the way around, some of our other roads are going to be falling apart. So we need to have, and that's not a lot of length. Surface treatment or those types of applications are kind of expensive. So it's not a huge length of kilometers. I think it's maybe 4 kilometers in total, where we did a kilometer and a half or 2 kilometers last year. So that's actually a blended program. We should probably be sitting at about 180,000 a year. But Kale and I have worked how we can sort of get there. We're not going to get there all in 1 year. That's one I would probably like to see in every year, and one I would get behind. I know every year capital programs sometimes get pulled out depending on how much other stuff is on the go. This is one that probably should go every year to make sure we maintain our road system. So it could be the microsurface or surface treatment or some crack sealing, if that answers your question, Your Worship.
It does. And actually, it was a quick process and it really wasn't that expensive either. So I can see why you're going down this road. It seems to make a lot of sense.
Yes.
I know I live on Sydenham Street, so I see the benefits of that particular surface, and they did a great job.
Thank you.
Your Worship, Councillor Barber has a question.
Sorry, I was reading something here. Sorry, Councillor Barber. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. To either Kale or to Rob, 4th line down is a 1-ton truck. Underneath that, it says vehicle. What kind of vehicle are we talking about?
Sorry, I'm not sure, Rob.
Sure. I think it's a pickup truck vehicle, Your Worship, through you. There is a vehicle replacement schedule in there, just to give council some comfort level on the vehicles. You'll see that the trackless was due to be replaced last year. We got through another year with it. I will say, though, that I see some of the repairs coming in on that, so it might be time to not hold off on that one any longer and start to think about replacement. Kale and I would use that similar strategy on those other vehicles. So just because the vehicle replacement schedule says this is the year, if we review that and we can hold off a little bit, we would do that. Obviously, not just simply buy a vehicle because it's on the list. But I truly haven't had a lot of time this year or the end of last year to sit down with the staff to go through all of the vehicle needs. But I understand we're due for a pickup truck, a much needed pickup truck, I think.
Okay, or it could be a contribution to reserve.
I will defer that one to Kale.
Yeah, through Your Worship. The way that works, Councillor Barber, is that contribution will go through asset management. And then the projects and the vehicles are all commingled within that asset replacement plan. So any increase of the 50K would go towards your asset management contribution.
Okay, thank you.
If there's,
go ahead, Councillor Charlton. Go ahead.
Yeah, through Your Worship, to Kale. So we had to put Clarence Street reconstruction off for a year, but I believe last council meeting you mentioned about trying to carry on and get everything done in the following 9 years. So are we trying to put like 10 years road reconstruction into 9 years now, or did everything just get pushed back a year?
Through Your Worship, we've actually this week been working on data on our condition assessments of our roads and looking at what made sense among those 9 remaining projects in terms of prioritizing them. And the Director of Operations has done his best to identify what we can do on a 1 per year basis. And years 6, 7, 8 is going to be a little bit negotiable. So you'll see in year 2022, Elk Street and Pfaff Ave are both listed. So that's $3 million worth of road work. That's the double to catch up in 2022.
Okay.
And I think that the Director of Operations would like to see some additional condition assessments to line up whether we're doing one a year or one every 2 years or 7 out of 10 years, or what the right number is long run for the town. And we'll give him that opportunity to do that as he catches his breath this year and has a chance to go over some updated condition data for him.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving forward, operations with relation to water and sewer. These projects are identified by our both our water staff and our lagoon operators from Aqua. We try and identify as many of these projects as we can for the next couple of years. But this is something that Council has just approved, the water rates and sewer study, and that will include a 10-year capital plan. So right now we're at the tail end of the last 10-year capital plan, and you'll see the updated data from this in 2021. So these columns will fill out to 2025 in a pretty detailed manner after we finish that rate study this year. Generally, the projects there are on a as needed basis. The water and sewer infrastructure is definitely in need of attention, where we need to focus on continuing to keep it in good condition. And I think that the Director of Operations would probably agree that these are all items largely that are meant for this year. They're new projects, except for the filter sand replacement, which was scheduled for last year but was unable to be completed. That's the sand in the actual sand itself in the sand filters as part of our filtration system of our lagoons. I don't know whether you have anything to add there, Rob.
No, I think there was some sand removed a couple of years ago. As the top layer of sand gets some organics build up into it, and you can imagine the weed growth, it's heavily fertilized, if you will. So once the organics build up in the sand really becomes ineffective, really reducing the capacity at those lagoons. The town, a few years back now, took out about 6 or 8 inches of sand. And part of the recommendation is to take out an additional 6 or 8 inches of sand, because now this stuff has been inundated with organic material, and then to replace that with about 1.5 feet or 2 foot of specialized sand.
So I think that project is the major one within the lagoon project section. The one relating to water, the director had brought the report relating to some investigation around water tower options that will drive the large project identified under the water at $350,000. That's going to be dependent upon the outcome of that report. Any questions there from council? Okay. Moving right along. Corporate services. A number of these projects are carry forwards from 2020. The OP zoning reviews and DC studies, that is part of the development charges. That's what that 30,000 is. It covers the development charges study, which was just approved last meeting. You have the Talbot Street East, the 3 properties that are owned down there. We are marketing them actively, and I get on average inquiries once a week relating to what is the intent, what can we do, what are our options. I've put aside $50,000 there as to items we may need to do relating to either further roof repairs or other items to prepare for sale if council wishes to go down that road. At this time, the buildings are secured. However, I'm setting aside at least something to deal with that if council wishes to go that direction. CIP applications are a placeholder each year for any potential applications, and the website update is already underway. Actually should be coming to completion within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Barcode scanner for Great Plains. These are all projects that were underway last year. We're working sort of methodically through the accounting system upgrades, and in combination with the office renovation, these things are ticking along quite nicely. So we did a server upgrade to house the new upgraded accounting software. We did the accounting software upgrade. We upgraded the printing capabilities at the counter. The counter is all in with new tile, and the tax bills can be redone now to include a barcode for scanning at the front counter. In 2020, we did some investigation on repainting the clock tower roof and doing some small repairs to the face of the clock. I didn't actually think at the time it would be that expensive to repaint or reshingle the roof of the clock tower. We were mistaken. That was exceptionally more expensive than I anticipated, and quotes north of $50,000 were received. It's a very small square footage of area, and I'd be interested to hear council's thoughts as we deliberate whether painting it is the way forward, although being a temporary solution, or whether reshingling is really something they want to move forward with, which is a considerable greater investment, but longer term finish. In addition, there's a carry forward there for the old town hall HVAC. They've done preparatory work. We have drilled a new gas line across to the building for that HVAC unit to be installed, and they're looking to get underway in the next week or so. So we're praying for a bit of a mild spell. Old Town Hall painting on the exterior. This was something we didn't get much time to deal with in 2020. We're suggesting painting one side, the windowsills specifically, one side of the building each year. And this project is expected to probably roll for 3 or 4 years. The police station roof rework. We've been doing this. We've been chasing the water on the roof of the police station for a number of years. In fact, since I've been here. And it's difficult with that roof design to identify exactly where the problem is occurring. We've done a number of different repairs over the years, and we did actually do some improvements in 2021, which has helped. I think there's probably another little bit of work there to do, and there's $10,000 set aside to deal with that. So hopefully we can put the leaks that have occurred there to rest. The interior layout changes on the main floor of Town Hall. That project went very, very well in 2020. We finished the bulk of it as we entered into early 2021. There is some small pieces, possibly the construction of one or two interior walls, which still remain to be done. We have set aside some money to finish that. 25 Center Street was a subject to the grant application and part of the modernization fund to create the accessible and social distanceable council chambers to allow us to meet in person again if permitted. That project is identified here. The funding identified is both grant and modernization funding. There'll be very limited amount from the municipal building fund is what I'm anticipating. Finally, with relation to the White Street industrial land that was purchased recently, as we move into the closing date of that purchase, I've set aside $15,000 for pre-engineering for both the stormwater design and road layout, which I hope to be able to achieve in 2021. And during that time, we can still market the property as a 50 plus acres of available industrial land, which is serviced for a single owner basis. But the $15,000 will start the engineering process to get us ready to build it into smaller lots if council so wishes. Other than that, the only large project which I want to call attention to is the town hall elevator. That's the only item that hasn't been addressed, and it's slated for 2022. Some money coming from the modernization fund, but largely that is the last remaining large infrastructure improvement to town hall, which is going to be required. Happy to take any questions on those.
Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. To Kale, rather than chasing leaks in the police station because of the unique design of the roof, would it be an idea to look at perhaps constructing a roof over top of the existing roof to more conventional construction?
Through your worship, that was the original intent last year. So was to put a peak in between the two end peaks, if you will, of the police station. So creating a peak in the middle and a new path for water to run. On the west side of the building, we seem to have identified areas where we could actually put gutters, which has actually alleviated the issue on the west side. We are actually directing the flow path of the water off of the large sloped roofs to get it away from the flat roof area. And that seemed to work. The new area of concern was on the east side. And I think we have a smaller solution where we can create a small peak to redirect water, just as you mentioned. And we're hoping that can be a 2021 upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oslach?
Whoops.
You're on mute, Councillor Oslach.
Sorry. To Kale, about the clock tower, is that a slate roof or a shingle roof? Asphalt shingle?
Through your worship, the current clock tower roof is sheet metal. It's painted black, and the discoloration you see up there is the paint coming off. So our options, the metal itself isn't going to go anywhere, but the option is sandblasting or removing that paint and putting a fresh coat of paint on the steel, or removing the sheet steel and putting perhaps a steel slate looking roof on in its place.
That seems like it's a lot of money for the a little roof.
Through your worship, I totally agree. We got the quotes, and again, there's the genie boom necessary to do work at that height, and they're working around a very large tree. So I can only tell you what they told us as far as length of time to do it. It's all man hours, not materials.
Well, as far as that tree goes, it's nearing the end of its life, and it should never have been planted in the first place. Blue spruce in front of the tower, and it basically hides the tower and hides the clock. So I would suggest removing it. That's my only suggestion.
Through your worship, we'll take that on board, and we'll review with the potential quoters on the options, and we can identify if there's an alternate arrangement that could be found there.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, we can go over the last bit here that I've prepared for tonight, which was this is the transfers to reserve that we were discussing earlier with Councillor Barber. These are the standard transfers, which we do annually for the most part. One is a equalized contribution regarding elections, which creates the reserve for the following election period to satisfy the costs associated with conducting the election. The EECC is the contribution to the capital fund. The accessibility on the buildings. This is one that I have slated to stop in 2024. We're supposed to be compliant by 2025. So really this is all in preparation for us being ready by that point. So I expect that to drop off. Park trails expansion, based on our current boundary, I had that in for this year and next. The Cottonwood subdivision is going to do a huge amount of work related to the expansion of the town's trail. And we'll have some remaining pieces to connect our existing trails to it, which will require some funding. But I'm not sure our existing boundary has a lot of additional areas past that. One of the items also in the parks is a master plan, recreation master plan, and the future capital budgeting and forecasting can take direction from that study as to what would be needed. The asset management plan is in for, again, $650,000 this year. I've indicated in 2022 and 23 increasing that to $700,000, and in 2024 and 25 increasing it again a $50,000 to $750,000. That's just to set in council's mind that this is probably going to require a bit of additional funding, not necessarily this year, but I think in future years you should at least have the expectation set that it'll go up, and your requirement to fund will probably go up. Computer replacement plan is a standard item. An annual contribution for the police cruiser is from the Police Service Board. And the final year of our replenishment of our development charges reserve, based on our phase-in from the last bylaw, for council who wasn't with us in 2017, we phased in the change in the development charges. And part of council's responsibility is to actually make up the shortfall provided in giving everyone the break in that phase in. So if the building permits aren't paying it, council has to. And this is the last contribution of that, because we're now charging 100% of the development charge rate currently to our permits. So 61,000 is the remaining amount there. If there's any questions on those or concerns, those are the annual ones. Those should be familiar to most.
Cale, I do have a question about the police cruiser. How often do the police department get a new vehicle? Is that every 2 years?
Through your worship, it is scheduled that they would have a capital project in their project list, which is every second year at around $40,000 they have allocated.
Okay, because I was just wondering how often that happened and if that's actually enough money.
Through your worship, our experience this year has been right around 50,000.
Okay, I just thought I'd double check with that. Thanks.
Council, through your worship, Councillor
Oslich, sorry.
Yes, your worship. To Kale, Parks Trails expansion going east. A number of years ago, I think that was quoted at between 650,000 to around 700,000. What do we have in reserves right now for that expansion? Any idea?
Through your worship, I do not have that number with me this evening. I can verify that for you, Councillor Oslich, and the reserve fund balances will be brought to you at a future meeting, but I'll make sure that's on for February 1st.
Yeah, because that's if we go ahead with Cottonwood, like we were planning to go ahead with Cottonwood anyway, that would be a great asset to Cottonwood to extend the trail east to Cottonwood.
Through your worship, and perhaps maybe I wasn't clear with that. So part of the subdivision plan is to provide the trail. So the only remaining funding there would be the connecting of the existing trail to the Cottonwood Trail. So I think that's a lot of that is going to be dealt with. But the Parks and Rec master plan will fill in those details as to exactly what's needed and the funding needed to do that. But as far as current balances, I'll definitely update you on the 1st of Feb.
Thank you.
So that's a pretty good foray or segue into our next steps. The draft project schedules for fire, EECC, parks, and the clerk's department will be next meeting. Police service budget, the BIA budget, and EECC budgets will be finalized and presented to council in the coming meetings. Our grants and donation requests will be considered by council in February. And project funding still needs to be finalized, as I mentioned, to make sure that we are able to fund all the projects in full. So staff are busy doing some final review on the operating budgets, dealing with year end in 2020 and the reconciliations of that, making sure that the 2021 budget estimates make sense in light of the full year actuals for 2020. The water and sewer rate studies will get underway right away, and that will be a huge help to both the capital plan for the next 10 years and also the funding to accurately have enough in reserve to fund those 10-year capital plans. I think the director would agree that there's significant capital investment in updating and automating the water and sewer system in order to support the ongoing growth, both in the Cottonwood Hills subdivision area and the new industrial park on White Street. Other than that, it's kind of all we had for this evening's presentation. Happy to take any questions or follow-up that council would like to see.
There's no questions for Keel at this time? Okay, Josh, could you read the resolution for us, please?
Certainly, through your worship. The resolution is that council receives the budget presentation for information, and we will need a mover and seconder for that motion.
Okay, so someone to move and someone to second, Councillor Barber and Councillor Charlton. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is new business and matters of urgency. Okay. Reading of bylaws, third and final reading.
That council gives third and final reading to bylaw 421, being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for all tax classes for 2021 and to provide for the payment of taxes and provide for the penalty and interest of 1.25%. Bylaw 521, being a bylaw to authorize borrowing for current expenditures and capital outlay during 2021 from the Consolidated Reserve Fund of the Town of Elmer. Bylaw 621, being a bylaw for municipal expenditures. Bylaw 721, being a bylaw to appoint the municipal auditors. Bylaw 821, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a development agreement between Propar Incorporated and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at 230 Elm Street in the Town of Elmer. And finally, bylaw 921, being a bylaw to appoint Heather Sachs to the position of treasurer.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I need someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Next item up is inquiries by members. Okay, first Councillor Oslach and then Councillor Charlton. Go ahead, Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I was concerned that we had two fallen police officers in the last month and a half, and Service Ontario lowered their flags. Ontario Hydro lowered their flags, but the Town of Elmer never lowers their flags for fallen police officers. I was wondering why. Could you research that or something to that effect? Even at the Legion, we always lower our flags to our fallen officers.
Okay, I'm going to ask Josh to please answer this because he's the one that takes care of that. Could you answer that question, please, Josh?
Certainly, through your worship, I would have to refer back to our flag maintenance policy. It is something that we're currently in the process of overhauling. per council direction later last year. But again, Councillor Ossuch, I'm happy to follow up with you. I just I don't have that policy in front of me right now, so I wouldn't be able to give you an overly specific answer, but we can certainly look into it.
Yes, further to that, we had a fallen OPP officer in Manitoulin Island about a month and a half ago, and we had another one that resided in Hagersville. I know he was killed in Calgary, but his home was in Hagersville, just home in Norfolk. And I was just concerned about it because we always lower our flags to veterans, fallen veterans, and a political elite from from the federal government or provincial government. And I think we should do it for not only police officers, but I think we should do it for firemen also. Thank you.
Councillor Tarleton.
Through your worship, just inquiry. So we're in the midst of a pandemic, and if we had a major power outage for extended period of time, like half a day, 2 days, the East Ogden Community Complex is supposed to be our heating and cooling center, and I just wonder what the protocol would be in dealing with that during a pandemic.
Who would like to take this? Kale, would you like to answer that question, or Josh?
Through your worship, I think Josh had some conversations with the CEMC, our fire chief, this week about this. This is something, just for point of clarity, this is something would be actioned by the emergency control group at the time, and we would take direction from partner agencies, which would be involved in the running of that warming center or emergency shelter if it were in place that way. And maybe Josh has some additional details from his work with Sam.
Yeah, through your worship and two members of council, I agree with what Kale just mentioned. As it stands right now, that exact question actually has been posed to the Southwestern Public Health Unit by our CEMC, just to ensure that our emergency management plan is as comprehensive as it possibly can be. So again, as it stands right now, Sam is awaiting some further direction from Southwestern Public Health, and we would rely on sort of other agencies to help us through that.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious how other municipalities might handle that as well, but okay, thank you.
Through your worship, as a follow-up to that, Councillor Charlton, if you're referring to how other municipalities deal with it, some municipalities have a contract in place with the Red Cross, and we would look to similar situations where if we're operating as an emergency shelter, we would partner, as you say, with agencies, some of those that are in the business of providing these shelter spaces. That is not a program we normally provide at our level, nor do we have the staff to do that effectively and manage it well. So we would rely on partnering with the agencies that exist in our area, including Southwestern Public Health and potentially the Red Cross, to help with administering that correctly.
And so through your worship, they would use the space then at the complex anyway, likely. They would just oversee it.
Through your worship, I would refer that to the CEMC on what that relationship would exactly be. But that's typically, I have been involved in that in the past, where the Red Cross is the operator of the shelter. We are supplying simply the space.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. In answer to Arthur's question about, about the passing of officers, the police service did lower their flags to half-mast on both those occasions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other inquiries? Okay, statements and committee reports. Okay. The next item is report of mayor, and I don't have a report this evening. Notice of motion. And the next item up is meeting closed to the public. So the resolution, please.
Council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 7:48 p.m. for the purpose of considering personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Tarleton, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. And we'll just take a moment. Thank you.